Good morning, church community. I'd like to ask you to stand at this time. It's nice to see you here this morning. Let's begin by singing a couple of songs. Praise the dawn of salvation. Fires remain no more. For Jesus is greater.
Some of you guys that may not know this, but we are doing what we call a launch team gathering this morning, okay? So basically there's two separate environments that we're trying to create if you're new to this whole thing. The first one is that we do at the beginning of the month, like the beginning of December, like this is the 8th, the first Sunday that we gather together. We do what's called a launch team gathering, and then in a couple of weeks' time, we'll be right back here in this place where we do what we call a preview service. Now, a preview service is what we hope church looks like on a week-to-week basis at Church 180. A launch team gathering is where we do kind of a little family huddle, and we talk about how we're aspiring to cultivate our culture. And so we're trying to create this culture like for this church. So that's what a launch team gathering is. And I'll be talking more about that in a minute, kind of half message, half that. But I want to make a couple of just announcements real quick. Like you notice that we don't have a host up here this morning, kind of talking about anything. We are going to do an offering if you brought an offering with you today. And like what we usually say at this time is that everything that we're able to do is because of the generosity of so many different people all over this country. And actually, we've even got people supporting us internationally as a church because we lived in New Zealand for a while. Anyway, you don't care. But yeah. So what we're going to do this morning is once we're done with the message, we're going to lead into communion. And then we'll have the offering buckets at the communion table, so you can prepare your offering if you brought that in that way. The other thing that I would say is just turn your attention to the Connect cards. And we're going to adopt this language here at Church 180 where we're going to say, we just ask that every single person, every single week, fills one of those Connect cards out. Because if it's your first time, we want to give you a gift, even at a launch team gathering. And you can hand that in at the info center later if it's your first time. However, if it's not your first time, we want to just keep up with you, and we want to know what's going on in your life. We want to be praying for you, and it's your best way to connect with us as well. So those two things, you can drop that in. If this isn't your first time, you can drop that in the bucket as well. Back when you take communion, if it is your first time, get your gift out of the info center. Okay. All that said, I got a couple more announcements, and then we'll jump in. Next week, I'm going to talk about serving today and volunteering and some other things. But next week, at the same time as this right here, we're going to be right back here, okay? At 10 a.m. next week, December 15th, there's going to be none of this set up. Like, we're going to have nothing set up except for the kids in there. We're going to have childcare for the kids in there. And basically, what we're going to talk about right in here, we might even make a circle, I'm not sure. But what we're going to talk about right in here is our volunteer culture. And so we're going to talk about some really, really, really fun things. And I just wanted to say that even if you haven't signed up to serve yet, and even if you're not on the volunteer team, you're more than welcome to sit in, and you're more than welcome to experience what we talk about whenever we talk about our volunteer culture next week. So it'll be right here, same time, donuts and coffee, not much of a setup at all. We're probably going to have paper handouts, sing a couple songs with paper handouts and that stuff. It's going to be a fun time together. So the week after that will be our big service for the month. It'll be our preview service, December 22nd. We're going to do a Christmas gathering. It's going to be a blast right here. Because, guys, here's what we're doing right now. This morning, we've been troubleshooting kinks. Like, we fired up a heater for the first time in the kids' room today. Like, one of those ones that looks like a rocket ship, and we're all figuring that out. And like, because we're practicing. We're trying to get out all the kinks. We're trying to our kids check-in failed us today, some things. And we're trying to get all these kinks out before we get to what we call our grand opening as a church, which we're planning for January 26th. We'll be here every Sunday except for the 29th and the 5th of January, 29th of December and the 5th of January. But when we kind of throw our doors open to the whole wider community is on January 26th. And it's going to be awesome. It's going to be a fun day. Couple things to catch you up on and look forward to real quick as well. Man, it was amazing. I didn't get to talk about this yet, but on November 19th, a couple weeks ago, we were able to cater lunch for the entire staff of this school. And man, they were so appreciative. They loved it. And it was a fun time for a few of us to just get to rub shoulders with the staff and the personnel and all the people that are here. And then on December 16th, that was looking back, and then on December 16th coming up, we have our basically our Christmas dinner for all of the McKinney-Bento, which is a governmental word for the homeless kids of this school and of Ocean View Hill School. So we've invited about 100 kids, I guess, to this dinner. I thought we were inviting way more, but as it kind of shaped out, we invited about 100 kids and their families. And they'll be able to come in and receive a taco dinner and everything. And then we've been collecting toys for the past few weeks, which we've got. I don't even know the number. I wish I knew the number right now, but I know we have like approaching like 150 toys, I think, that have been given, which is incredible, is insane. It's going to be a fun night, and you can still drop your toys off today at basically at the info center, as well as sign up if you want to work that night from 4 to 7 p.m. From 4 to 7 p.m. that night, December 16th, and it'll be over at the Ocean View Hill School. Ask any questions if you have any questions about that. Write in your connection card if you want us to follow up with you about that. All of that. We do this, I say this, we do this because we want to be Jesus right here, right now, to this community. We've been called to be conformed to his image. We've been called to be his representatives. We've been called to be Jesus here. And that's why we do these things. But we also do this because we want to see people. We believe this is the best way to see people turn toward the hope that we believe that only Jesus offers. Whenever we are Jesus, we extend basically him to the community through service. So that's some of the announcements. Let me get into some launch team gathering kind of stuff as we go. One of the things we talked about the last time we were together was this. We said, in the United States of America right now, nearly 4,000 churches every single year close their doors. 4,000. And to keep up with population growth right now within our country, to keep up with population growth, that nearly 8,000 churches every single year would need to be started. Just to break even, just for the same percentage of people that consider themselves Christ followers to be that same percentage, nearly 8,000 need to be planted. And we're nowhere near that. No organization is the Stadia is what it's called, has given us these statistics and given us these figures, and also look to the city of San Diego, and they said with the city of San Diego right now, there's about 3-point-something% of San Diego attends church on a Sunday morning. And even if every church was thriving, even if every church was killing it, even if every church was doing amazing work all over this city, not even 9% of the population would be in church this morning. Not even 9%. And so what our organization has kind of talked about, if you look at the statistics, you look at the numbers, you look at the facts, that the only way to change that, the only way to change the spiritual landscape and to see more and more people turn towards the hope that Jesus offers is through the continued planting of new churches, the continued establishment of what we're doing right here. The grand opening, January 26th, church planting. The only way to change that is through that. But the kicker is what our organization's learned is that the only, like what we hope to be, I guess I should say this, is a reproducing church, meaning that we want to, within 5 years, we want to be able to plant another one of these churches in this area. And we weren't going to do that. But the only way to actually be that effective, and the only way to actually continue to plant churches like this is to establish a culture where really people buy into three things, and where people are all about three things. And those three things are that we build a culture of giving, which we talked about last month, that we build a culture of serving, which we're talking about today, and then we build a culture of inviting and excitement about what's going on, which we hope to do through being Jesus in the community. Because what better thing can you give your life to than that? So today, so those are the three things we're going to finish up next month on January 12th with our launch team gathering, talking about inviting. But today I want to focus on that aspect of serving. And so our organization's trained us to build this into our culture from the get-go. So I want to basically talk about service this morning and talk about serving and volunteering within the church. And to do that, we're going to go to a passage in the Bible out of a book called Ephesians. And we're going to be in Ephesians chapter 4 is where we're going to be this morning. And we're basically going to try to tackle the first 16 verses of Ephesians chapter 4, which I'm really excited about. Now, let me give you a little background. Ephesians was originally a letter that was written to a group of gathered Christians in the ancient city of Ephesus. Well, it's still a city, but the city of Ephesus. And a man named the Apostle Paul, he wrote this letter to this church. And in the entire first 3 chapters, leading up to chapter 4, he's been talking about what God has done and accomplished for them. He's been talking about how this city that's in modern-day Turkey, that would be Gentile territory, not the inherited Jewish people, but about how they've been adopted as God's children. And about how they've been saved and set apart. And about how Jesus is for them and has given them, opened the kingdom to them. And that they've been redeemed. And this passage where we're going to this morning, Ephesians chapter 4, is where Paul starts to turn the corner. And he says, based on what God has done for you, here is what you should do. Based on all these, chapter 1, 2, and 3, based on these things, here's what you should do. And he jumps into Ephesians chapter 4, verse 1, and we're going to have it on the screen. I have it right here. As a prisoner for the Lord, because Paul's in prison when he's writing this, then I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you've received. So right away, he's saying, based on everything God's done for you, man, he's like, as a prisoner for the Lord, I urge you to live this life worthy of the calling that you received. I was kind of reading this week kind of about this from some scholars, and it reminded me of some of the stuff that they're talking about how basically what Paul's about to talk about in these first 16 verses that we're looking at are specifically regarding the church and how to live a life worthy of the calling within the context of the local church, like what we're doing right here. And one writer, one of my favorite scholars, a guy named N.T. Wright, and he was talking about how basically these first 16 verses are kind of like the instruction manual for how to do church. He's like, a lot of times we don't read the instruction manual, we don't look at, like I think about myself, I'm not an instruction manual guy. Like this morning when we fired up that heater, I did not look at the book. I did not know what was going on. I just was waiting for the, and I was like, oh, yeah, well, fire now. Yeah. And everything went fine and dandy this morning, but I've had a lot of times in my life where I've not read the instruction manual and things have not turned out well. Specifically when putting together IKEA furniture, right? And you get about 3/4 of the way through and you're like, I gotta take the whole thing apart. Yeah. And basically what Paul is doing here in Ephesians chapter 4 is he's giving us the instruction manual for how the church functions and how the church operates. And the reality is this, and I wrote it, and I'm going to say this in a bunch of different ways, a bunch of different times. Without the church, we will all fail at being who God dreams and desires us to be. Without the local church. Because he goes right on in verse 2 and he says this, be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. And you're going to see this. I think you have it on your sheets. You've got these launch team gathering sheets and we want to give these out at these launch team gatherings so that you can see our vision, you can see our mission, you can see our values, you can see, because we want to be an open book and we want to cultivate our culture this morning as we do this. And one of our core values is that we turn toward unity. And literally what we've talked about a couple months ago back in September is what we said was, Jesus said this in John chapter 17, where Jesus says, people are going to believe in me, not based on how you can rationalize a bunch of different things and explain dinosaurs away, but people are going to come to believe in me whenever you guys are a unified front. And you have unity. And so I love it. Paul basically says here, he says, bearing with one another in love, and it's this idea of putting up with one another. It's like, okay, people are going to get on your nerves. It's going to be crazy at times. But put up with them. Put up with them. And there are things, you don't put up with. But for the most part, we put up with each other. The annoying things that aren't, worth anything. And I love that he writes that. And he goes on to say, verse 4, he says, there's one body, one spirit, just as you were called to one hope when you were called. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who's over all and through all. And basically this is where Paul gives us the why. He says, because God is one, we need to be one. Because we have this one faith, we need to be one. And the reality is this, and I have this on the screen, this is basically another way of saying what I've already said, but the church is one with people held together by a commitment to Jesus and his mission. That we become unified whenever we lift up Jesus and we lift up his mission. But the reality is in so many churches and so much of the time, we lift up other things and then we become fragmented and not unified. And what we want to say as we cultivate our culture here is we want to say, okay, what we are about is lifting up Jesus and his mission. We are going into our community as people who lift up Jesus, but lift up what he's called us to be. And what he's called us to be is reconcilers, people who, as we talked about in our last preview service, people who help establish peace between other people and God through the way that we live and the calling that we live as a church. So I love this. And then he kind of goes to where we're about to go this morning. And I love this. Verse 7, he says, but to each one of us, grace has been given as Christ apportioned it. This is why it says, when he ascended on high, he took many captives and gave gifts to his people. Now, this is a really confusing section of the scripture, because it's like, well, when he ascended on high, he took many captives. So basically, Paul is making a direct reference to this audience back to Psalm 68. And Psalm 68 was more than likely a song that was sung by the ancient Israelites, and a song that was all about Moses going up on the mountain and bringing down the law, and bringing down the governance and the way in which that nation would establish itself, and the rules that they would follow and the covenants that they would have. And basically it was a picture of Moses going on high and bringing back the law, but saying Jesus went up on high and he came back and he gave each and every single person gifts. Does that make sense? So he's basically saying, as Christ apportioned these gifts. And it's them also understanding this, and I feel like I need to get this across. Paul is basically saying this church, every church through its people, has everything it needs for everyone to spiritually flourish. If that makes sense. For everyone to come alive in Jesus. That within this room, everybody has giftings, everybody has abilities, everybody has what this church needs for it to spiritually come alive and flourish. And what that means, that he's referring to, is that people should be able to walk in this room on a Sunday morning and completely be skeptical, and completely have be filled with doubts, and that there are people within this room that are like, oh yeah, I get that. And I can be patient, and I can walk alongside your doubts, and I can walk alongside your hesitations, and I can walk aside your cynicism or your skepticism or anything that you have. And with my gifting, because I've been there, or whatever, with my gifting, I can help you to spiritually flourish. It may not be overnight, it may not be tomorrow, but it may be sometime in the future through that. What this also means is that people can walk in here with weak faith and find strength in the giftings of other people. And that people can come in here with their lives an absolute chaotic mess. And either by something they've done or by something that's been done to them, and then they'll find the support they need. Because God has given, in this room, God has given many of all of us gifts with which every single person can find spiritual flourishment. I don't know if that's a word, flourishing. Just make that up. But that starts to raise the question, okay, how does God actually provide these gifts? And what does that mean? Because that's been interpreted so many ways, and some of you are about to get wacky and weird and do some of that, maybe. But it goes on in verse 11. We're going down a little bit, and it says this: so Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, and the teachers to equip his people. You should go and memorize this verse. This is good. He gave the apostles, the prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers to equip his people for works of service so that the body of Christ may be built up. And that's all I wanted to go to. I actually just wanted to go to the first part of it. But it's this idea, okay? It's this picture of Jesus. Like, I don't know if you can picture like a meal or like it's like Jesus with like a measuring spoon or some kind of like deal, and he's like putting your gift on your plate. You know, I think about, like, when I think about this, I think about feeding my kids at night, and I don't give them what they want. I mean, sometimes you gotta keep the peace, but you think like, no, like, I'm gonna reach my hand into this bag of carrots, and I know Jenny likes them, and I know Ruthie hates them, and everybody gets 2 carrots tonight. And it's this image of Jesus saying, okay, you go back to verse 7 there, and it says in verse 7, that each one of us grace has been given as Christ apportioned it. And that's a direct reference to what they're talking about. He gave himself apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, teachers, to equip people for works of service. And it's this idea of Jesus saying, here's you, here's you, here's you, here's you, here's you, according to the grace that you've been given and the gifts that I'm now giving to you. It's like Christ is giving that to us. And here's the deal. Everybody gets a gift within the local church. Everybody gets talents. Everybody gets abilities. Everybody gets things that they're good at. And the thing that I need you to hear is this, and we have a slide that says this, is God is providing for the needs of this church, right now, through giving each of us a part to play. Read that slide, Anthony. Boom. God is providing for the needs of this church right now through giving each of us a part to play. If you would say that you're a part of this church, God's given you a unique role to play within this church, which I just love being able to say. And we don't have time to go over all the passages, but you might, if you're taking notes, you might want to write this down. Because Paul is making a reference to stuff that he's talked about in 1 Corinthians chapter 12 and Romans chapter 12, as he starts to talk about the church being this body. And he talks about the church being this body where Jesus is the head, and everybody else gets to kind of play a part, because we're all connected. And I thought about this week, and I don't know if it's been done before in church, and it probably has, but you got that kid song, like the hip bones connected. And it's like this idea, I'll stop. But it's this idea that we are, Christ is the head, and that we are, as a part of a local church, parts of the body. And it's like, well, you're a hand and you're a foot, and he actually talks about that, makes those references in other parts where he mentions this. But it's this idea that we all get a part to play, a unique part to play within the body. And the thing is that nobody gets to be the appendix, okay? And nobody gets to be the gallbladder, right? Because, you can get rid of those things and then, they're fine. Everybody plays a part that's necessary. Everybody plays a part that's needed. Everybody plays a part that matters. And that continues. I was thinking about this, and I sent an email out this week to many of you guys, and I tried to be clever so that you'd open it and write what I learned from a sprained ankle in the email. But the reality is this, is that I talked about the first time I ever sprained my ankle in that email for a second. But the reality is this, is that I've sprained both of my ankles probably 15 times or more. And there's been a lot of different times in my life where there's been just like moments where I've sprained my ankle and I'm just completely useless. And my ankle is like, it's just like, you got the crutches out again. And as a result of having the crutches out and your ankle being useless, all of a sudden you're overcompensating with other parts of your body, all because one part became useless. And I guess the image that Paul's given is without my ankle, my entire body couldn't function as it was intended. And while my ankle wasn't performing to full capacity, other parts, specifically my left knee, a lot of times had to overcompensate for the useless part. And here's the thing, okay? And I need us to hear this. Because this is the culture that we're trying to cultivate within this church. And I'm not trying to persuade anybody or pressure you. And I understand that there's a lot of us in the room that wouldn't necessarily at this point call this your home church or your local church yet. And we hope that someday soon you would. And we love you. There's a place for you here. We want you here. But here's the deal. If you would consider yourself a part of this church, you have an important part to play. You do. And the reality is that, like, we need you, and you need us. Because it's like that ankle thing in the body. It's like once it's useless, everything else hurts. And everything else isn't what it was designed to be. And I remember actually one time I sprained I think it was my right ankle, and I favored it for way too many miles, like 30-something miles in a race. And my left knee like ballooned up. And the reality is that whenever we are a part of a church and we do not play our part, it can mess things up. So I'm not trying to persuade or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, man, we're cultivating our culture. And I just need you to hear that you have an important role. And you have an important part to play within the local church and this church. And then there's a lot of us here this morning that have just jumped in the game. And I just want you to feel encouraged. I want you to feel motivated. I want you to feel like, man, I do play an important part. And then I understand there's a few of us in the room that you're like, man, I don't even know where to start. I don't even, like, maybe I've started something and everything, but there's this, Rick Warren, this pastor up in Orange County in Lakeside, said this thing a long time ago, and he talked about a great place for people to start to find their part of the body is to look at their shape, okay? And it's a little cheesy, I don't like acronyms, and everything, but can we get that, basically the first slide, to look at our shape. And so the S stands for this idea of spiritual gifts. So what are your spiritual gifts? And what we hope to do within the context of this church is eventually give you spiritual gift assessments and help you go through that and discover what your spiritual gifts are. But usually your spiritual gifts are just a reflection of what you're actually naturally good at. And so it's something that, maybe you have the gift of hospitality and you know that. And your spiritual gift is the gift of hospitality within the local church, in the context of the local church. And there's all kinds of stuff like that. So it's your spiritual gifts plus your heart. So like, what are your passions? Like, what just consumes you? What are you passionate about? What is that? And that's oftentimes where your part of the body is as well. The A is the abilities. So like, what are you naturally good at? It's kind of followed up with that spiritual gifts thing. But it's like, what do you do in 10 minutes that takes somebody else 30 minutes to do, basically? I mean, some of y'all got to be way better at spreadsheets than me, because every time I sit down to do an expense report, it takes me what it should take a normal human being way too long. It's not my gift. I was always a talker. And so I can stand up here and talk in front of people all day long. You put me in front of an expense report and I'm like, oh gosh, I'm going to beat my head against something. But I have to do them. So P is your personality. So what's your personality? And what, because oftentimes our personality will help put us into the right place within our giftings, within our part of the body, within the church. And the last thing is, and this is probably one of the most fun, hard, painful, but most beneficial, is what are your experiences? Because some of us in this room have been through some stuff. And whether that be painful or whether that be joyful, whatever it is, we've been through some stuff and we have experiences to share. And part of your shape, part of your part in the body will depend on the experiences that you've had up to this point in your life that are there. So that's that. The hope is to eventually find a place to serve in the church, in the local church, that matches your shape. But the best way to just start to figure some of this out is just to get involved and to get in the game. Because the reality is we're like at this church like right now, and I don't even think someday in the future, we are not like eHarmony or Matchmaker or whatever some of those things are, and we are not sophisticated enough, we don't have good enough systems, we don't have any of this stuff set up to be like, oh yeah, you. I mean, we can like make some guesses and some stuff like that, and like give you some spiritual gifts tests and everything like that, but a lot of it just has to do with getting in the game. Just get involved and be like, yeah, I didn't like that. That wasn't cool. Or, oh man, I came alive doing it. You get what I'm saying, right? Most of the time, the best thing is just to jump in where their needs are, engage in with. So basically what happens when we start to do this and start to play our part in the body, others as well as ourselves will grow in Jesus. And we will turn toward Jesus because our inclination in this life is selfishness. It is. It's me, through and through. Like I'll stand up here as the guy with the microphone who's supposed to be the pastor and tell you how selfish I am. It's because it's the inclination of my heart. And there's absolutely nothing that's less like Jesus than selfishness. And there's absolutely nothing that's more like Jesus than selflessness. And so, and I love this because we go basically to the last part of the verse that I want to look at this morning, and it's this, verse 14. And this is just good stuff. Then we will no longer be infants. Once we've played once we've established ourselves as part of the body, and once we're playing our part and we're receiving, like if you're a hand, you've still got the arm that's feeding. Once we've been there, we're a part of the body. We will no longer be infants, tossed back and forth by the waves and blown here and there by every wind of teaching, by the cunning and craftiness of people and their deceitful scheming. Instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become in every respect the mature body of Him, Jesus, who is the head, that is Christ. From Him, the whole body, joined and held together for every supporting ligament, grows and builds itself up in love as each part does its work. And I love this because there's something that's kind of missing in our English portion of the Bible, but basically what that last thing is saying is every part doing what it was apportioned to do. He's saying when every part is doing, like, remember Jesus with the scoop, like or the hand of carrots, let's just say that. Jesus with the portioning the gifts. When every part is doing what it was apportioned to do, it talks about this maturity that the body experiences. And as we're here, a month and a half away from launch, and we're trying to abolish the term launch. A month and a half away from grand opening, because launch is confusing. So we're a month and a half away from grand opening of this church. We are trying to cultivate our culture and say, we aspire, even though we're young, to be a church that's mature. And the only way that we become a church that's mature is through people using the gifts that Jesus has given them, as He apportioned them to give them. I hope that makes sense. I want to kind of close this morning by giving you two pictures, okay? I want to give like two images and when one's on this side over here and another's on this side over here, and at any given moment, the reality of this church is we're heading in one of those directions. In a lot of churches in our city, we're heading in one of those directions. The first is this, is a picture of verses 14 through 16. It's the picture of a mature, fully equipped, healthy local church. It's a church that where the kids ministry is just the heaters work. No, not the heat. Where the kids ministry is fully equipped and fully functioning and doing amazing, and that we can literally drop our kids off at check-in and know that they're learning so much about Jesus, so much about the life that He desires for them, so much about what He dreams for them in their future. That we have a church where the production team is in the back killing it. We've got video. Y'all can hear each other. You can hear the band. You can hear stuff. That all this is going. That the cafe is creating memorable moments out in the courtyard. That the hospitality team is making people feel like they belong. The setup teardown team is chugging along and getting things done. The social media team is spreading the good news of the value that Jesus can have in all of our lives through the local church. And every team is just overflowing with the joy and the peace that Christ offers. And this community together is meeting tangible needs in a real way. And people within our community are finding hope, joy, peace, and the life they were created for as a result of every part of the body doing what it was apportioned to do. And then the second picture is a picture of no one doing anything. And everybody's busy, and everybody's got things going on, and you think about it, and it's like, man, maybe someday. But with this picture over here, just not only would we not exist, but a lot of churches wouldn't exist. And I have a feeling this is why 4,000 churches in our country every single year close their doors, is because their reality is sliding in that direction and going to a place where everybody's busy and nobody has time for that. And the reality is this. Imagine for a second the hopelessness that goes when the church slides this way. Imagine the depression that reigns. Imagine the anxiety that rules. Imagine the traps of addiction and whatever as the church starts to slide this way. Because what we really believe is that Jesus offers freedom, and Jesus offers peace, fulfillment, and joy, and freedom from all of these things. And then when the church is built up and healthy and functioning as a fully mature body, that people are set free and that people come alive in Him. And then people find the life that they were meant to live and experience the joy and the fulfillment, the satisfaction, the connectedness. And then imagine this picture over here where it's like, man, whatever. And the thing that the reality is that as a church, we will always be sliding in one of those directions. We just will. And I think that's why, Paul wrote this passage right here, and I think that's why we called it the instruction manual earlier. And maybe I should not take a page from my book, and we should actually look at the instruction manual for how we cultivate this culture and how we build this church. So that's all I got this morning. I'm going to pray for us. Everything as we talk about this inspiring culture. Here's the deal. After I'm done praying, actually the band can come up now. But after I'm done praying, we're going to do this thing that we call communion here. And at this table on the back left-hand side, basically there's a little bit of bread and there's some juice in the middle of the bowl. And what we do is basically we're remembering Ephesians chapter 1 through 3, where it says, okay, we are adopted. We are forgiven. We have been given hope through the blood of Jesus and through the body of Jesus. The body just represents, the bread represents the body of Jesus. The juice represents the blood of Jesus that was poured out on our behalf for our forgiveness, and so that we can be reconciled and be right before God, and that we can be adopted as His kids. So we're going to do communion. If you brought offering or anything, there's buckets back there as well. So I'm going to pray for us this morning, and then I'm trying to think. We should probably just do like a line that kind of goes around here, and make like a circle. Like I said, we're practicing. We don't have the two tables up like a previous service, so we only got one. We'll kind of go around in that circle. So Jesus, thank you for this morning. Thank you for this crew in this room right here, Lord. God, I pray that you, through your Spirit, God, would just speak to our hearts. God, through these words that I believe were your words, God, here. And I pray that your Spirit would just do something with that message. God, that for some of us in the room, it would be a call to action. For some of us in the room, it would be a better, more healthy understanding of your church and the way that it operates. And for some of us in the room, God, it would be the motivation that we need to keep going. And then for some of us in the room, God, it would be the encouragement that we need to keep going. God, we thank you that you are a good head on this body. God, and we pray that you would lead us into our future. That you would lead us, God, as we prepare to have a grand opening as a church. God, that you, God, that as we said at the beginning, that everything would be about you. Everything would be about turning towards you, and everything would be about your mission, God, here on this earth. God, so thank you. And it's in your name we pray, Jesus. Amen.
When the voices say I'm getting old, need a voice that drowns me and calm my weariness. You're in peace. Lord, speak to me. Set my feet to run to you. No other love. You captivate my heart. Only your light can shine through every shadow. You illuminate the dark. Jesus, oh, be my peace when it's grounded. For my fears when it's scary. No, no, no. Shine the shade that I'm mounted. Insecure and you. Oh